Hi everyone, welcome to a very special episode of the Talent Superheroes podcast. We have a very special guest with us today, Satish Rajarathnam. Satish, you are one true talent superhero. Thank you for making time to sit with us today. How are you?
Very well, Sudarshan. Thank you so much for that introduction. You make me a little conscious now to kind of live up to that.
Absolutely. I have no doubts we're going to have a fun conversation on several things. But more specifically, what I want to talk to you about is your strength is that of strategic HR, right? And you know how HR as a profession on LinkedIn is often considered as meme worthy, um, whereas HR plays a very strategic role in business, right? And it is it's one of the most least understood things. So let me kick this off with a very simple question, right? What, how do you look at what is strategic HR, and how does that play a role in defining business?
Well, let's keep the HR verbiage little aside for now, because that's a larger, broader topic to be discussed by itself. But to your point on being strategic, I think that's something that I would love to comment on and kind of have the discussion forward, right? It is about how you're going to be on the crossroads between microeconomics and your business objective, the purpose of your own business, right? I guess that's where, to me, the human side of HR comes into picture, right? That to me adds a very strategic value. So it is not just about running the life cycle processes, which has now become hygiene for any organization. But when you say strategic, how does one elevate into sitting up, talking business language with business, talking macroeconomic language when you bid for a new deal, when you talk about your geography, growth, and all of those, right? So that to me is a different league altogether when compared to the hygiene part of HR that I'm talking about. I mean, no two qualms about not to have that. That's as much important. But to me, strategic HR is all about understanding the global trajectory, understanding your business purpose, understanding your business objective. It could be organic, inorganic, and being right at the center, and then drawing up a plan from a people, culture, talent perspective. That to me is strategic HR.
Oh, fabulous, fabulous. And it's so it's so less understood because if you think about it, I think the macro shapes us as organizations, as countries, right? And at the end of the day, and that affects the way we go pitch for deals, the way we go win business. Um, and I know that a lot of times HR is looked at in terms of life cycle processes, but can you double click a little bit in terms of the entire uh, impact that you think strategic HR can bring to, say, the top line of an organization, right? Through people practices.
Yeah, so I'm gonna start from where I left with the previous comment that I made. That's why I said your life cycle processes will help ensure hygiene of the firm, right? To ensure that you have the right set of talent for customer solutioning, you have the right set of performance by creating high performing teams, you have the right set of career and succession planning who could kind of succeed the role and so on and so forth. But to your point, it is all about understanding what's the business trajectory, what's the vision mission of the organization, what does your stakeholder wanted you to do as an organization collectively, right? I think those are perspectives that one should know to kind of drive this part of HR to say so, right? It could all be, look, can I forecast my next 1 year in terms of what should be my capability that I should drive, right? From a people's side. Now, it's not about, mind you, it's a very distinction between hiring people with specific capacity or capability versus forecasting what skill set is needed. How do I build? How do I borrow from a strategic perspective from a talent side? I think that to me is very critical, and that's the impact that HR can bring in to the organization, right? Having said this, it's not just, you know like I said, what's needed for now for the customer. It's also about, as an organization, we want to build a particular capability. This is our strength, and how do we go with it? For that, do we have talent internally? Can we build adjacencies from where we have right now? Or is it all going to be outright capability acquisition from the industry? So those are areas that's going to add or have significant impact from a firm perspective, in my view, Sudarshan, to your question, if that answered.
Oh, absolutely. And I think you hit it out of the park, right? Because a lot of times when we look at just talent acquisition alone, it's fairly reactive, right? What's the open demand out there that I need to go fulfill? Do I have a person available today? If not, can I go hire external? And then the flywheel starts, right? But I think in the sense what strategic talent acquisition or strategic HR does is to effectively look at the macro, right? Look at where in that macro, what are the trends, what capabilities you need to build to what you have in the organization today. And in a way you could also apply that to say, hey, here's the talent I have, here are the kind of work that I can fulfill, or here's what's available in the market. And then go apply that to business and say, here's the stuff that you could go sell at a certain margin or at a certain profitability, which means that we can go hit this out of the park together, right?
Yeah, right. Sudarshan, just to add on to what you just said, and also from the previous question, the second part of your previous question is also about, it's not just about we wanting to build a particular capability for the firm, like you rightly said. It's also about getting to our existing customers and telling them, look, these are our new avenues, right? We can start consulting on these specific areas. So it's not just the margin and uplifting margin by building adjacencies. It's also about driving in what we call as existing new business, going to customer and letting your customer know that we've been doing this for years together, but we can also offer this for you, and being consultative from that perspective. So it's not about waiting for a SOW or MSA, pitching in and then bidding in and so on and so forth. It's also about proactively going ahead and upselling your firm's capability by saying, look, we can bring this onto your table. I know you're running this as your architecture. We can bring in a solution to this, and making sure that you're profitable in what you're doing, or your uptime or your migration or transition or whatever you want to call it as, right? You want to move from, let's say, a mainframe to a cloud, or you want to do app modernization or digital transformation. This is our capability, right? So you kind of build that much ahead of the curve and not wait for a particular need coming out from a customer saying, look, now I want to go to the market, I want to float an R5 RFP, and then start looking at partners who could help me out, right? So it will change the entire way that we look at business from that standpoint, Sudarshan.
Awesome. So what's fascinating, right, is typically when we look at proactive hiring and talent acquisition, we look at it from a context of let's analyze the demand, let's look at demand patterns. But I think where you're elevating it is to say, forget demand patterns. I'm going to analyze customer accounts, collaborate with business, and say, here's the potential upsell we have based on the capability we can do, right? Let's go have a conversation with a customer, showcase our capability, and if we can elevate the conversation to bring in more business, right? We know we can fulfill it as well as internally as well as externally, right? Thereby truly adding value to like a customer upsell or a strategic account, right? Which is very different than it's almost overlaps with business, as two in the box, right?
No, with you, Sudarshan. So, in fact, that's helping us as an organization today, right? So it is not about, like I said, waiting for an RFP to come in and then start looking at, do we have the skill, or do we acquire, do we build, do we borrow contingency, not, right? It's about sitting with the customer and asking, look, what's your 1, 2, 3 year goal? You want to do, sit with the CIOs on one side, sitting with the business stakeholders on the other side, and finding out, look, what is it that you want to do? What is your problem statement, right? We will come up with a solution, and for this solution, this is what we have internally, this is what we can build for you, this is what we can buy for you or borrow for you, right? That will give the confidence to the customer that we are there as a partner, and not just as an augmented solution provider, right? Makes a big, huge difference, right? So this is like saying, look, we will claim ownership along with your transformation, rather than saying You let us know how you want to program manage. You will only supply talent, right? Makes a big difference from that perspective.
Oh yeah, yeah. You're far more involved in the customer journey and their success if you're operating at the top three problem level versus acting like a body shop and augmenting supply of talent, right? Because that, I mean, that's an individual, that's a resource, but there's really not much of a customer relationship there. So fabulous. Now let's switch gears a little bit. What a switch from, what strategic HR is, a little bit of who Satish is and what you do, right? One of the things that's most fascinating for me, Satish, is uh, you do a lot of different things. You've written a book. You're a Forbes top 30 talent acquisition leader. On top of that, I think you're a mentalist, uh, and that's something that you enjoy. You go on campuses, you educate folks, and I what fascinates me is that you actually get one certificate done pretty much every week. So you're almost ravenous in your learning, right? So, two to three things. Uh, what keeps you going to do so many different things? Um, and where do you find the time? We all have the same time, but it seems like you get a lot more done.
No, there's a I don't want to let this secret out totality because it's like, but look, um, it's all about staying relevant, Sudarshan. I strongly believe in that perspective. It's a very strong line or very 50,000 feet level comment. But every day I thrive to stay relevant in the industry. Yeah. So that's a challenger part of me that keeps ticking. So look, if you don't get yourself um, certified on, let's say, a generative AI, for example, right? You will lose out when you go sit with a customer bid or customer presentation that's happening, and you nowhere to talk about your generative AI and what it can bring in and so on and so forth. Or if you go sit with a customer and talking about, I want to do hyperscalers, I want to do let's say app modernization, or I want to do cloud transformation, right? If as someone who is responsible for talent is not able to articulate those specific technology or reference architecture when a customer is sitting with you, I think you're lost, right? So that's why I keep harping on this specific initiative that I run through for not just me. I mean, if you look at it, I rub it on my team as well. My team rubs it on me as well. I call my team as a full stack HR team. So this is not just about um, knowing your hire to retire HR processes. That's not what I mean by full stack. When I say full stack HR, you have to be good in, look, if this is your customer, let's take a financial services or a health tech or a fintech, right? Whatever name that you want to put them on. Unless you understand their domain, unless you understand their architecture, I'm not saying you need to sit and code everything. I'm not saying you need to do R programming or Python or pick up and start doing Golang and other stuff, but at least understand what business they do. And for that, you have to be technically aware, not totally savvy, but at least aware in terms of what's happening in my view, right? And unless I'm aware and I walk the talk myself, it's tough for me to kind of go back and let my team know that, look, guys, be aware. Your own example of, if I were to go hire a full stack engineer in the industry today, if you do not know what that full stack means, right, then you'll only get a body. You will not get a talent. It's a very thin, finite line between these two, right? So that's one aspect. Second, I do a lot of teaching, and for me to do go teach with some brightest minds today in most of these universities and B schools and T schools, unless I'm updated with the latest technology or the latest nuances in the industry, whether it's management side or tech side or business side, look, I'm not going to be able to stand up there and deliver what is expected. So that keeps me on my toes. One, it helps me build my own, like you rightly said, my own skill proficiency that I would want to be living up to. Second, it's going to help me to kind of help my organization grow when there is a customer visit or when there is a solution that's happening or when there is an internal stakeholder meet that's happening. I don't want to be isolated saying, hey, you know, he's from HR, he wouldn't know as much in technology. No, I would stand up and kind of communicate, look, this is your stack, this is where you are, and hence you need this skill, this adjacency, this proficiency. We don't have this capability. Let's go hire from outside and whatnot, right? So for that, You have to be updated on a day-to-day basis, Darshan. It's more of my, for want of quote unquote insecurity, and to thrive in this industry, I keep upskilling myself. To the later part of your question, everybody has time, in my view. It is all about how to utilize it. Would you want to be on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Insta for 2 hours, or do you want to spend 30 minutes of that time doing a quick bite learning in any of the learning platforms and get yourself appraised of what's happening in the industry? It's a choice that we make. So to me, it's a choice that I've made, that I have to keep myself updated. Not that I'm not off LinkedIn, Facebook, or Insta. I am, but yeah, I give time appropriately for that as well.
I think it's fabulous, Satish. A lot of times we hear, right? You have to earn a seat at the table, but nobody ever says how, right? But if I look at what you just described, those are basically the building blocks of being the center, not just having a seat at the table, but being at the center of the table. You have to be eternally curious, which means that you learn what full stack is, what business is, and the rate at which technology changes. There's a lot you have to do. To some extent, you have to be paranoid so that you have that drive to keep learning, to have that curiosity, to have that discipline, right? Because when you say I want to be relevant, it's a nice way of you challenging yourself to say that I have to be on top of everything. But I think the people who do that are the people who get to the very top. So I think you've just given us the recipe for success and sitting at the center of the table by defining each of these individual elements. So thank you. I think that's very less understood, and I think that's a massive nugget that you've delivered here. So thank you so much. I want to kind of also understand, do any of these different things that you do, right? Whether it's teaching and being more of a full-rounded individual, right? How does that apply to your professional journey as well?
Sorry, could you repeat the question again, Sudarshan? I lost you.
Sure. I was saying, being a well-rounded individual, right? You mentioned you teach, right? You learn, you upskill, you're part of client-built conversations. How does all of that, of being a well-rounded individual, um, how does it affect your professional success? And what advice would you give for a lot of folks who are at the early part of their careers in terms of investing their time across these different things so they can go reach and achieve the kind of success you've had?
Well, I would drop a direct correlation between what I do otherwise in profession versus how that's impacting, um, where I work today and how I contribute to my organization. Look, I proudly go and flaunt. If you look at it, I wear my badge right now. That's the power of you know being little multifaceted in terms of what you bring into the table for an organization, right? Today, I can walk into a university. In fact, we had a meeting recently with the exec team. I kind of took them out to a university which is very reputed without quoting them out here. They took us through their entire incubation. They took us through their entire robotics, digital labs, right? AI, and so on and so forth. Now, if you look at it, because I go teach there, right, I get to take my organization through that journey as well. Yeah. So it's beneficial both the sides. If it's only going to be single-sided in my view, Sudarshan, in terms of just uplifting my own personal side and not to the professional side, I think it's gross injustice. Yeah. And it's to me, I think I'm very conscious about whatever walk of life that I'm part of outside of work. I would try to loop it back into my professional side, because eventually it is all hand in glove in my view. Wherever I go teach, we get talent as well. So it's easy for the firm to kind of be there on day one and so on and so forth, right? I can take in my tech team, I can take in my organization's capability into such universities, and provide solution out there for them too. Yeah. On the other side, when I go perform, let's say a half hour, 1 hour, conjuring or mentalism, the shows that I do, I bring in elements of my IT experience into that as well. So I kind of mold my storyline and user cases based on live customer problem solutions without quoting the customer's name, and say, hey, look, if this is what it is, this is how we can wriggle out using magic. So if you look at it, I connect my profession in all walks of life that I move towards, and that in turn helps me plow back all the credibility into the firm that I move into. Right. One example could be I've got a couple of leads right now saying, I saw you talking in this specific session. I'm more keen. Why don't you reach out? Let's work on a partnership. Right. So that's how we kind of connect. It's the end of the day, like you rightly said, it's all about crossroads, and that's something that I told earlier as well. Are you at the right crossroad every time? That's what you need to go behind. I've seen people deviating a little bit. I don't want to quote the book of Road Not Taken, but I always take the road not taken, because you may never know what's going to be there. It's about known devil versus unknown angel, right? I thrive on that philosophy, Sudarshan. So all of these eventually will come back and help your professional side, and I strongly believe in that.
Right. And I also think, Satish, it's also about connecting the dots, right? So, like, for example, when you go through disparate fields, right, and have varied interests, I find that the out of the box thinking can actually be developed much better, because the brain kind of makes unique connections based on various different facets, right? So folks most folks who are risk takers or are not afraid of taking risks are folks who are very happy to go do various different things, because what they are left with is the confidence to jump in and say, hey, if it's something new, what's the big deal? I mean, I went and did three new things, I'll go pick up a fourth, right? It becomes very natural, right? But one thing that you mentioned was about robotics, AI. I think it's a very good segue into technology. So I know that HR technology is not as well understood, right? And given that you look at strategic HR from an impact standpoint, right? Can you shed a little bit of light on how do you look at technology, right? And I know HR is very broad, so let's say talent acquisition, right? Let's narrow it down. Um, how do you see technology kind of shape talent acquisition? What's the journey you've seen over the last many years in terms of talent acquisition, as well as the role technology is playing? And I know technology is changing a lot, and far more rapidly than anybody would have imagined, but would love to hear your take on that.
Yeah, but think about this, right? A couple of decades or decade and a half that I've been in this industry, people industry, may not be IT all through, but then yeah, I've been in healthcare industries and then IT and so on and so forth across domains. Um, there's been a huge change. In 2004, if I recall, I was part of a firm where I had to run through the learning enterprise, uh, they call us LMS, quote unquote, during that day, right? It all started there, right? And if you look at it, it is not the big players in the market as of today. It was a mid-tier platform, but the features were fairly rich, and how you could get that implemented and so on and so forth, right? But from where to here, you look at the LXPs that are there in the industry right now. You have AI ML driven learning career path. You put in your name and say, I'm an HR professional with 26 years. It'll curate your learning content, learning path. It'll map that into adjacencies and skilling and so on and so forth. And look at the change that's already been, like you rightly said, from a tech perspective, right? Specifically around the talent acquisition side, the number of ATSs that's grown over the number of years, right? We've had people just keying in the name, downloading profile from an email, uploading it here. Look at the jugaad that we've done in the early days as well. Um, I still remember using Lotus Notes for moving in feedback and attaching a profile and sending and saying, "Can you please evaluate and send me the feedback?" and capturing it again. From there to where we are today, we have audio to text conversion feedback, right? You don't need the notes anymore. You don't need Excel sheets anymore. You pick up the phone and say, um, I like this individual. I find this as a strength. I find this as opportunities. Let's close this and offer. You speak out, you close it, it gets converted into text, and that gets fed into the applicant tracking system directly, and the offer gets rolled out, right? You get thousands of profiles out there. Earlier days, the sourcing team would sit and call all of them saying, are you willing to, what have you done? You revalidate, you screen profiles. Today, you have AI engines, you have bots that does the calling, kind of not just parse the profile, but also do a quick check, on the profile saying, hey, Looks like you've done this. Let's say, for example, you've been working on a banking domain. Looks like you've done a KYC on this technology. How did you go about in doing it? Does a very I would say quick bite size assessment to want a better words. The bot does that and come back and says, you're hiring for a front end developer. This individual has done that. 80% of the time he talks about that this is the technology stack he's used over the years and so on and so forth. So the closest fit for your JD is this individual with 80% closest proximity, right? It gives you the stack rank. So of the 1,000 profiles that you have, you will have 100 to 150 which says 80 to 90% closest fit to your JD, right? So your sourcing engine, your sourcing team will go behind these 150 first and not the 1,000 later, right? So that's changed significantly. Once that is done, today it's all about the candidates market, right? Candidate experience, right? Look at the candidate experience that's getting built out today. You have video based welcoming, video based offers that goes out saying, hey, thank you for attending our interviews. This is a position that you'll be part of. This is the technology stack you'll be working on. This is your leadership team. You have an avatar or a live um, AI, a video coming up and saying, welcome to our organization, right? Look at the transformation. Yeah, we will call someone to our office in earlier days, make him or her wait for some time. One recruiter will keep running around, signing papers, handing over sheets and saying, this is a company and so on. But now everything is digital, everything is bite sized. And that's what candidates want today. They don't want to keep traveling all around for an offer letter. How can we minimize the effort and maximize the experience? I think that's what technology has brought in significantly, in today's world, Sudarshan. So that's from screening to selection. You have the biometric driven assessments, right? One of your tools talks about use Microsoft Teams, but you can still validate in the background on the credibility of that individual's biometric assessment that happens, right? So things like that. So things are transforming today. You don't have to have multiple systems to do cross check and dedupe check and all of the stuff. Everything is seamless today. You have a half an hour conversation and it's all done. Maybe this entire blog that we're even talking about, when you edit it, it's going to be a totally different blog altogether and not this conversation and so on and so forth as well, right?
Absolutely.
That's the
Absolutely.
speed, that's the experience that technology is bringing into the table in my view.
Right. Oh, and fascinating, right? So if you look at it, uh, everybody thought AI would do the mundane and the grunt work, right? And it's doing the creative work. It's doing, and technology is now stepping into areas like that because it's brilliant that you talked about experience. I mean, if you think about it, candidate experience is very different because expectations are very different globally. I mean, we have the privilege of looking at candidates and what they want across close to 50 countries now, right? And I can comfortably tell you that few things are consistent. Nobody wants to put effort, which means that basic core principle make it easy for me. Everybody wants to be globally treated special, right? And everybody wants personalization. So I guess, the tenets of what candidates want globally and what talent wants globally is consistent across all these countries. What we've realized is the volume of candidates, people on the other side, which is the HR and talent acquisition side, and what they have to deal with is drastically different. When you look at the US, you will get 10 candidates apply for a requisition. You will, your AI might say, here is your rank, but you can talk to four, invite them, you will have your first offer, the person joins in 2 weeks. And India, where you put a roll out and you'll get hundreds of applications, right? So the quantum of effort on the other side is different, but I think what talent wants on that side is fairly consistent. And so I think absolutely spot on. And I think talent acquisition or technology, if it can be used to deliver experiences, right, create moments and memories that matter, right, I think that drives a significant uptick as compared to just uh, you know uh, workflows or compliance, right, which is all necessary, but it's not sufficient, right, not in today's era.
So this is like the book, right? Good to Great. It's like how do you This is like 211 degrees versus 212 degree Fahrenheit, the boiling point. I think that's where technology is shifting significantly, the way we look at the entire talent space in today's world, not just in hiring, but across the life cycle process as well.
Right, right. I want to switch to something very different. Okay. Um, I know you do a lot of different things, but I'm definitely curious to understand how do you evaluate and hire people, right? Um, what is it that you look for, right? And if you're convinced somebody is absolute top talent, how do you, what do you do to kind of bring them in? If you can talk through some tricks or tips or something that you use to evaluate people in your own teams while you're hiring, uh, I've been very curious about that. Would love to know more.
I'm a misnomer, let me put it that way. I don't want to get stereotyped in the terms of doing interviews for an hour, going through the entire 9 yard and so on and so forth. My way of looking at a potential talent is a little different. Or maybe that's what most of them do. I wouldn't know. At least the way that I look at it is a little different. I look at the candidate's curiosity, right? This is like, what I call as a child in you, right? It's about how curious you are given a customer problem statement, right? How curious you are to go back and sit to the customer and question, is this the right problem you're trying to solve? Rather than blindly picking up the customer's view and saying, I will solve this for you. How curious are you? Right? So that's something that I look at as a very strong tenet, right? One. Second, what I call as creativity. Now that I know what the customer's actual problem statement is, how creative am I in kind of providing a solution to that problem statement? It's all about bringing in your analytical ability, your solution orientation, result orientation, and so on and so forth, right? Bringing in a proper solution, you kind of saying, hey, this could be the probable way forward because this is your problem statement. We'll try and resolve this together, right? That's the second part that I would gauge on for hiring any potential. The third, in today's world, it is all interconnected. No more saying I will develop a software, right from your design document till testing to do the DevOps, right? But it is all about collaboration. That's the third component, right? How do you collaborate with other functions, right? Today, gone are the days where you're saying waterfall, that is someone will do the DoD, then someone will do the dev, and then someone will do the testing, then someone will do the deployment, then do a DevOps and production support, and so on and so forth. Today, everything is with a team of 8, 9 people sitting and doing by feature, by story. How do I develop and deliver immediately here and there, right? And for that, unless you collaborate well with teams, right? Today, if you take a pod structure or you take an agile team or scrum team, there are multiple names put on out there, right? If you take a scrum team, for example, you will have varied experienced people in the team. That could be a architect sitting there at an enterprise level. That could be a tester sitting and waiting to kind of do regression testing for the feature that's going to be deployed in the UAT or in the prod server. Or there could be a dev guy sitting and saying, I'll do front end, and do testing. You do pair coding, right, at the same time. So look at the way things have changed. It is not the same that used to be a decade ago. Today, customer wants to be party to your entire development journey, part of the Scrum team, right? Customer in most cases are the product owners coming in and saying, look, I'll work with the team as well. Your product managers is your program manager, and then you have the Scrum masters, and then you have the team, and then the pods out there, right? So that's testimonial of the fact that how things are moving significantly, Sudarshan, right? And that's why it's very as much critical for us to know as to where we're heading towards from a tech transformation standpoint, in my view. Yeah.
Oh, fabulous. So basically, if I think about it, people who build depth invariably always have curiosity, which is something you seek. They have to go dig into the why, right? Why are you asking me this problem? What's the problem? Why is this happening? So you go peel the layers of the onion, right? The second thing after that is, yes, it will bring tears when you go peel the onion, but do you have the grit, the resilience? Do you have the willingness to say, I will partner with you, and I will bring my analytical ability and my solution orientation to take you to an outcome? right? And the third thing I think is very straightforward: are you a good human being, right? Because if you can collaborate, if you're a good human being and you're willing to collaborate with everybody, then that's great. Because if you have one and two but you're not a good human being, then it's not a sustainable, way to go deliver results, right? So I think if I have to
So,
summarize, I think those would be three good summaries. Yeah, sorry, you were saying.
absolutely. Now, the fourth one I want to add on to what you just said is about, I want to go back and link what you just said into what I mentioned earlier as well, right? So now I want to bring in the HR side of it. We spoke about the business side. I'm a strong believer that being in HR, you have to accentuate H in HR, which is a human side in the human resources. I guess that goes pretty well into your summary right now. That's the last component that'll be, hitting the sweet spot in saying, look, tech wise, knowledge wise, functional wise, domain wise, I'm all good. But if I'm going to say that I will do everything by myself, you're not going to go anywhere. Yeah, you need two hands to clap. So you need to know how collaboration works. I guess that's the job, that's the responsibility of HR, being a consultative partner to such pod teams or scrum teams or business as a whole by saying, this is how we build this behavior or culture in the firm, saying we will work together as a single team, as a village, and not in silos.
Nice. I think, Satish, that was probably the best way to summarize this. Human and HR is often, when we keep running towards results, we forget about the human and HR. So I'm glad you kind of re emphasized that. I think it's a critical aspect. And, empathy, the ability to understand one's point of view, the ability to collaborate by keeping your ego aside towards a problem statement, I think those are all massive drivers for success. And thank you for sharing that with us. In fact, thank you for making time today on the podcast. I really enjoyed speaking with you. I would love for this to continue for longer, but I know time is of essence, and I know you managed to make time from your busy schedule today. So thank you, Satish. Thank you for sharing your nuggets of wisdom with the audience, and uh, I look forward to chatting more with you in subsequent seasons.
Pleasure, Sudarshan, and thank you so much for having me here in the discussion as well. Yeah. Thanks.
Thank you, Satish. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for being here today.